so we're going to go over the trapezius and then go to the Sub-Clavius, but first we're going to explain the model. So this half of the model is the under layers, so under the first layer. So all the stuff on the right side is the top layer of the muscles. And then if you go into the front, the left side is, that's the right side. The left side is the
left side.
His left arm.
Yes.
His right.
His right arm is the top layer, and the left arm is the bottom layers. If that made any sense at all. Okay, going to the back, to the trapezius. Okay, so the trapezius. The origin is the skull to the thoracic vertebrae, and the insertion is the scapula, clavicle, and acromion. Next is your rhomboids. These are the under the trapezius. You have your major, which is on the bottom, and your minor, which is on the top. And the origin is the last cervical and upper 5 thoracic vertebrae, and the insertion is the medial scapula.
Also, during this video, take note of the freshly painted fingernails.
Yes. Okay, next, the latissimus dorsi. Okay, this is one of the top layers. The origin is the lower 6 thoracic, lumbar, iliac, and sacrum. The insertion is the bicipital groove. Whoa, Michelle, whoa. Okay, next is the teres major, or teres major. The origin is the axillary border of the scapula, and the insertion is the bicipital groove.
It's under your armpit.
Yes, this one's under your armpit.
That's the major.
The major one, yeah. Next is the teres minor. That's the top one. The origin is the axillary border of scapula, and the insertion is the greater tubercle. Moving to the front of the body, we have the pectoralis major, so the top layer. The origin is the clavicle, sternum, and the first 6 ribs, and the insertion is the bicipital groove. Then you have the pectoralis minor, which is under the pectoralis major. Its origin is the 3rd, 4th, and 5th ribs, and the insertion is the coracoid process. Next is your supraspinatus, which is on the back, on your scapula. The origin is the supraspinatus fossa, and the insertion is your greater tubercle. Next is the infraspinatus, so lower, so the bottom part of the scapula. Origin, infraspinatus fossa, insertion, greater tubercle. Then we have the subscapularis. So that's, here, flip it around. So here's your scapula, and then it's underneath, subscapularis, underneath. So the origin is subscapular fossa, and the insertion lesser tubercle. Some people like to think like submarine, subclab, scapularis. So it's like under, because the submarine goes under the water. So next is your serratus anterior. So that's on the side of the body under your arm, like on your ribs. The origin is the first 8 ribs, and the insertion is your scapula. Then we have your deltoid muscles. So the origin is the clavicle, scapula, and acromion, and the insertion is the deltoid tuberosity. Next is your sternocleidomastoid. That's on your neck. The origin is the skull, the mastoid process, and the insertion is the sternum and clavicle. As you noticed on some of these names, like they tell you in the name where they're gonna go. So sternocleido, so that's one of the places on your clavicle, and it goes to the mastoid process, which is like a spot on the head. Okay, and then last is your subclavius, which is under, so sub, Sub-Clavius under the clavicle. And so the origin is the first rib, and the insertion is the clavicle. And that's all.